Half-Life Alyx marked Valve's long-awaited re-entry into the world of City 17, on an Earth overrun by the alien race known as the Combine. Taking the beloved series into virtual reality was a major stride to say the least, but as you can hear in my review, it assuredly paid off. There are many new innovations in technology and gameplay alike on display in Alyx. Valve's history of using Half-Life games as tech demos for their new innovations is crystal clear. From the original's advances in level design and NPC interaction to Half-Life 2's abundance of physics-based props, Half-Life Alyx goes one step further with fine-tuned player interactions with physics objects. And in no chapter of the game does this level of interaction become clearer than Jeff.
Minor spoiler warnings for some parts of Alyx's campaign, but nothing too serious. Let's talk about Jeff.
Alyx's adventure through a pre-HL2 City 17 has her breaking and entering a vodka distillery. Here she meets Jeff, an interloper powerhouse zombie that cannot be defeated by common firearms, who will tear you apart if you get too close. It's a battle you have no chance of winning. The catch is, however, Jeff is blind. He can't see Alyx, but he charges straight towards any loud noises nearby. Thankfully, there aren't too many obstacles which make noise.
Oh, I'm taking one of these for myself.
A boulevard of broken bottles is the perfect set piece to do battle with a blind slasher monster. Not only are there boxes full of easily shatterable bottles lining the path, making for perfect natural traps, but the bottles can be picked up and thrown across the room, luring Jeff the killer. Hey, let's not call him that. Luring Jeff, the monster, away. Adding another layer to this, Jeff and some areas of the map emit toxic fumes which will cause Alyx to cough uncontrollably if inhaled. The best way to deal with this is to simply cover your mouth and hold your breath. So you have to juggle interacting with switches and buttons with covering your mouth, using your flashlight, and being at the ready to distract Jeff at a moment's notice.
And this balancing act is made all the more difficult by, but could only ever truly work in virtual reality.
The way slasher-style killers who chase you through various games typically work is largely based on your awareness of them. Hearing Mr. X stomping around on floors above, or your tracker gently beeping to indicate a xenomorph. And the scariest bits, in my experience, come from a sudden lack of that feedback. The killer's location becoming unforeseen only for them to suddenly pop out of a vent or a wall as a consequence is the easiest way to stoke panic in a player in a traditional video game. But Half-Life Alyx is impressive work. Instead of the fear being based on the player's awareness of the opposition, it's based on their awareness of self. With tracking of your location, hands, and head, the game plays around situations where the player accidentally knocks over a bottle or trips an alarm, causing Jeff to charge. Throughout the entire chapter, you're pretty much always able to tell where Jeff is by a simple cursory glance. The fear in this monster is not stoked by losing track of them, but rather losing track of yourself. Not covering your mouth to stifle coughs, not catching a bottle before it rolls off a shelf.
And sure, obviously there are plenty of horror games that work more on a hide-and-seek style of play, knowing where your killer is and avoiding their view.
But the mechanic can only reach such a level of completeness in VR. The immersion created by this technology is unparalleled, and your self-awareness is limited by your field of view, and no direct input is required in order to accidentally alert the killer. Brushing your hand past a bottle is all it takes to wake up Jeff. Imagine trying to make these mechanics work in a normal first-person shooter. You'd have a dedicated button to hold your breath, perhaps a selection of items you could pull out of your inventory to toss, and when you want to steer clear of Jeff, you'd simply stand still, not pressing movement keys. The translation of actual clumsiness, fear, and motion captured by virtual reality is irreplicable in a traditional FPS to this degree. Instead, analogs must be created, such as holding a button to slow walk to reduce the sound of your footsteps. It's impossible to recreate the experience of Half-Life Alyx's Jeff chapter without virtual reality. The high fidelity of player involvement and impact on the world is a requirement for a monster like this to work. Up until this chapter, most props in the game are pure fluff, objects to knock around for the fun of the interaction. It's not like Alyx needs to have all this detail, but the fact that it exists opens the door for new possibilities in the future of VR titles. While it's used here and there for climbing up into windows or digging through piles of trash for supplies, an excellent possible example of how such detailed interaction can be used is something like Jeff. This chapter is downright intense, terrifying to experience your first time through. Of course, this is where some of the drawbacks kick in.
Quick sidebar here, I had to record this chapter 5 times for this video. The first time the recording failed, the second time was fine, but then I got a 2K monitor and wanted higher resolution footage to match.
The third time, the audio corrupted, the fourth time my controller died while I was playing, and finally the 5th time I got a successful recording. In these 5 play sessions, I learned a few things. I found some resin, the currency used for upgrading weapons, hidden in new places I didn't previously discover, learned exactly how close you have to get to Jeff before he retaliates, and finally I discovered a gas mask hidden in a cabinet, which you can actually don to become immune to the toxic fumes. Features like this are just another way in which Half-Life Alyx encourages the player to experiment, giving the players the tools they need and letting them figure it out on their own. However, even with the amount of detail presented by dynamic props, the actual maps and most impactful moments of the Jeff chapter are purely static. As in, there's no variation in locations of traps, the solutions to the puzzles. This chapter plays out pretty much exactly the same way every time. The only difference of note is in questioning the ethics of keeping Jeff trapped in a trash compactor at the end of the segment, or finishing him off yourself. Games like Alien Isolation, which are entirely focused on horror rather than dedicating a single chapter to it, provide broader and more varied scenarios for killers to terrify. The gameplay beats which repeat themselves upon playthroughs are spread further, with dynamic horror from the AI filling the gaps. Alyx, partially as a result of being a VR game, has much more compact chapters, with smaller areas used repeatedly. You see, virtual reality has to run at very high resolution and frame rates to prevent motion sickness in the player, and while Alyx performs among the best of any VR game I've played, that is as a result of careful optimization and building the game to be VR exclusive from the ground up. Maps are often vertical in nature, such as letting you platform over a giant pit only to climb your way down into that pit later, meaning detail in the distance doubles as playable level, making twice as much use of an area while saving on performance that would be reduced by a wider open terrain. If you have to render rooftops and ground levels anyways, you might as well make those areas playable. You can see this done all the time in Valve games, Half-Life 2 especially. Not only is it a clever trick to make smaller maps feel longer and run smoother, but it also allows the game to showcase its mechanics in the distance before allowing you to drop into the area yourself and interact with them. At the beginning of the Jeff chapter, Half-Life Alyx uses this to teach you how to deal with Jeff. First by seeing how he reacts to breaking bottles from a safe distance, then by bringing you down to his level and asking you to work your way past him. Then you trap him in a freezer and subsequently let him out again without getting yourself killed. All of this takes place over a relatively small stretch of map, but it feels much longer by reusing areas with alterations. When the lights go out, for instance, you have to backtrack in the dark to power up an elevator, still using the same small segment of the map, but with added gameplay. And finally, a chase sequence full of traps leads you over the ending area of the chapter. Again, the game renders areas of the map which at first seem like pure detail, but later act as functional terrain. And once you reach said area, you're tasked with finding 3 power cells to open the exit. These cells are scattered around in a room I like to call the toy box, where all the elements you've been introduced to in this chapter come together at once. You can only enter this room by dropping down vertically into it. This allows you to track Jeff's location safely from above and only enter the toy box once you're ready to confront him. The 3 cells are all hidden in various areas which all have their own environmental puzzles to solve, and messing up these puzzles will cause noise to be made, luring Jeff over. It's truly a brilliant idea, and there's plenty of bonus resins strewn about, which again can only be acquired safely if you're careful. One false move and you'll have a Jeff on your hands.
All of this is great the first time, but these puzzles don't change between playthroughs, and Jeff's behavior, by design, is extremely predictable.
And my point is, I don't think Jeff could have worked for an entire game unless major changes were made to his design to allow for more varied interaction. But doing so would also take away what makes this chapter so good, the detailed interaction created by the carefully designed maps. An entire game with this level of carefully planned events would not only be extremely difficult to make, but also rather boring on repeat playthroughs. This is to say, I think Jeff is my favorite part of Half-Life Alyx, specifically as a VR game, making use of its engine and mechanics to create a terrifying experience if only a single time through. But the rest of the game works better on repeat playthroughs since the puzzles and combat are a little less static. There's more freedom of movement and decision making at the cost of being a tad more generic.
At the end of the day, without being a VR title, Half-Life Alyx would be just another FPS. Not a bad game, but nothing special either.
Half-Life Alyx, just like most other Half-Life games, is a tech demo to showcase what is or will be possible, in this case for the future of VR shooters. But Jeff isn't a shooter segment. You barely use your gun for anything aside from shooting locks off doors. It's a virtual reality horror game one-off, a standalone showcase of using the new Source engine to a possible end. What it lacks in replayability, it makes up for in originality. And it's now up to Valve going forward, modders, and other game developers to make use of these tools and their limitless potential.
Yeah, I trapped Jeff in a trash compactor. And then I crushed him.
God damn!
I hope you enjoyed my dive into what I like so much about Jeff. If you want to see me ramble some more, you could check the description and follow me on Twitter. And while you're down there, I'd appreciate it if you considered subscribing. Either way, thank you so much for watching and take it easy.